The life you want will always be found on the other side of hard work. Think about that. Every person dreams. Every person hopes. Every person wants success. But wanting success is not rare. Working for it is. That is where the difference begins. The difference between wishing and achieving. The difference between dreaming and becoming. The difference between average and extraordinary. Most people are waiting for motivation, waiting for opportunity, waiting for the perfect moment. But successful people understand something important. The perfect moment rarely arrives. You must create it, and you create it through work, not occasional work, not convenient work, hard work, consistent work, focused work. Success is predictable. It's not luck, and it's not magic. It's hard work and discipline. Now listen carefully. There comes a point in life when you must decide. Will you continue making excuses, or will you make progress? Because the future does not belong to the most talented. It belongs to those willing to work when others rest, learn when others relax, persist when others quit. Think about your goals, the goals that keep you awake at night, the dreams that refuse to leave your heart, the future you know you are capable of creating. Those goals have a price. Everything valuable has a price, and the price is effort. The price is discipline. The price is consistency. The price is becoming stronger than your excuses. Most people want the reward. Few people want the responsibility, but you cannot separate the two. The reward follows the responsibility. The harvest follows the planting. The success follows the work. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. That is the mindset of a winner. Not asking life to become easier, but asking yourself to become stronger, more disciplined, more focused, more committed. Because every day you have a choice. You can stay where you are, or you can grow. You can settle, or you can strive. You can make excuses, or you can make progress. And those small choices eventually become your life. Now imagine where you could be 1 year from today. If you worked harder than ever, if you stayed committed, if you refused to quit, if you gave your best every single day, your life could be completely different. Not because of luck, not because someone saved you, but because you decided to do the work. We're going to explore why hard work remains the foundation of success, why discipline beats talent, why consistency creates greatness, and why your future is determined by what you are willing to do today. Because extraordinary lives are not built through extraordinary wishes. They are built through extraordinary effort. Work harder, stay focused, remain disciplined, and become the person your dreams have been waiting for. Let me ask you a question. What separates one person from another? Why do some people seem to move ahead while others stay in the same place year after year? Is it luck? Sometimes people think so. Is it talent? That helps. But talent alone is never enough. The real difference is often much simpler. One person is willing to do a little more work, a little more preparation, a little more learning, a little more discipline. And over time, that little more becomes a lot more. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Now think about that. Not dramatic disciplines, not impossible disciplines, simple disciplines, repeated consistently over and over again. That is where success begins. Most people do what is required. They do enough to get by, enough to avoid criticism, enough to stay comfortable. But successful people develop a different habit. They do more than expected, and that extra effort changes everything. You see, life has an interesting way of rewarding people. It often rewards those who go beyond the minimum. Not immediately, not overnight, but eventually, the reward comes. Think about a farmer. The harvest does not arrive the day after the seed is planted. There is work to do. There is patience required. There is care required. And yet the farmer continues. Why? Because he understands a law of life. You reap what you sow, and you often reap more than you sow. The same principle applies to success. Every extra hour spent learning, every extra chapter read, every extra effort made when nobody is watching, those things accumulate, little by little, day by day, year by year, until one day people notice the results. Then they call it luck. But you know better. You know it was effort. You know it was discipline. You know it was the willingness to do more than was required. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. That's a powerful philosophy, because wishing changes nothing. Growth changes everything. And growth requires effort. Extra effort. Now let me tell you something important. The extra effort is not always visible. Sometimes nobody notices. Nobody applauds. Nobody congratulates you. Nobody sees the sacrifice. But that does not mean it is wasted. Far from it. Those unseen efforts are often the most valuable, because they are shaping you. Success is not only about what you get, it is also about what you become. And every time you push beyond what is comfortable, you become stronger, more disciplined, more capable, more valuable. The marketplace rewards value, not intention, not potential, value. And value grows when you put in extra effort. Imagine two people. Both start at the same place. Both have similar opportunities. Both have similar abilities. One does what is necessary. The other does a little more. Who do you think will be ahead after 5 years? The answer is obvious. The gap starts small, but it grows, because extra effort compounds. That's what many people fail to understand. Success is rarely one giant event. It is usually a series of small decisions, small efforts, small improvements, repeated over time. The person who reads 10 pages a day, the person who practices a little longer, the person who stays focused a little more consistently. Those people may not look different today, but give them enough time. The difference becomes impossible to ignore. You see, average effort creates average results. That is not criticism. It is simply a fact. If you want extraordinary results, you must be willing to give extraordinary effort. Now, that doesn't mean working yourself into exhaustion. It means bringing your best. It means refusing to settle for mediocrity. It means asking yourself one important question. Can I do a little more? A little more learning, a little more preparation, a little more discipline, a little more persistence. Those small additions create extraordinary outcomes. That is the secret. Not a secret of magic, not a secret of luck, a secret of effort. Every successful person eventually learns this lesson. The reward is rarely attached to the minimum. The reward is attached to the extra mile, the extra hour, the extra preparation, the extra discipline. And here's the beautiful part. Most people are unwilling to do it, which means the opportunity is available to you. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the most talented. You simply have to be willing to do a little more than average. So remember this. Success notices effort. Life notices effort. The marketplace notices effort. And eventually, rewards follow effort. Not immediately, but inevitably, because success has always rewarded those who are willing to give more than expected. And if you make that your habit, your future will never be average. Let me tell you something that separates winners from everyone else. It is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not even opportunity. It is timing of effort. When you work, most people want success, but they also want comfort. They want results without inconvenience. They want success without sacrifice. But life does not respond to comfort. Life responds to effort. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. And discipline is often tested in the quiet hours. When no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when no one is competing, that is where the difference is made. Because average people choose comfort. They rest when they should work. They delay when they should act. They wait for the right time. But successful people understand something different. There is no perfect time. There is only time, and how you use it. You see, every hour has value. Morning hours, afternoon hours, night hours. But the people who rise above average, they learn to use the hours others waste. While others are sleeping, they are preparing. While others are distracted, they are building. While others are resting too long, they are working quietly on their future. Not loudly, not for attention, but with purpose. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. Because better people use time differently. They don't ask, is it easy? They ask, is it necessary? And if it is necessary, they do it. Now listen carefully. The world does not reward the busiest person. It rewards the most productive person. And productivity is often found in the hours others ignore. Early mornings, late nights, quiet moments. Those are powerful hours because they are free from distraction and full of opportunity. Most people underestimate what can be done in those hours. A little learning, a little planning, a little discipline, a little extra effort. Over time, that becomes a massive advantage. Think about it. If you work when others rest, you are not just working more. You are building separation, distance, a gap between you and average life. And that gap grows every single day. One day, people will see your results. They will say, you are lucky. But they won't see the nights you stayed up. They won't see the mornings you showed up early. They won't see the discipline no one applauded. They only see the outcome, not the sacrifice. But you will know the truth. You will know what it cost. You will know what you gave up. You will know the quiet hours that built everything. And that knowledge creates something powerful. Confidence. Real confidence. Not spoken confidence. Earned confidence. Because when you work while others rest, you are sending yourself a message. I am serious. I am committed. I am building something that matters. And that belief changes everything. Now understand this clearly. Rest is not the enemy. Laziness is. Recovery is necessary. But avoidance is dangerous. Because every time you choose unnecessary comfort, you delay your progress. And success, delayed too long, becomes success denied. So here is the principle. Work when others rest. Not because you hate comfort, but because you love your future more than temporary ease. Because in the end, the people who change their lives are not always the most talented. They are the ones who simply made a different decision. When others stopped, they continued. When others rested, they worked. And over time, that decision changed everything. Let me tell you something very simple, but very powerful. Your life will not change until your work ethic changes. Not your dreams, not your wishes, not your intentions, your work. Success is not something you pursue. It is something you attract by the person you become. And the person you become is shaped by how hard you are willing to work. Every day, every moment, every effort. You see, most people want better results, but they are not willing to increase their effort. They want more success, but the same level of work. And that is not how life works. Life responds to intensity. Life responds to effort. Life responds to energy applied in the right direction. If you increase your effort, you increase your results. It is that simple. Now think about this. Two people start at the same point. Same opportunity. Same potential. But one decides, I will work harder than ever. Not once. Not sometimes. But consistently. Every single day. That decision changes everything. Because effort compounds. Just like interest in a bank account. Small increases in daily work become massive differences over time. Let me ask you something. What happens when you stop doing enough and start doing more than enough? You separate yourself from average, from ordinary, from competition, because most people operate at the minimum level, minimum effort, minimum discipline, minimum focus, just enough to survive, not enough to grow, not enough to excel, not enough to stand out. But successful people, they raise the standard. They don't ask, is this enough? They ask, can I do more? Can I go further? Can I push harder? And that mindset changes everything. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. Because better always wins. Better habits, better discipline, better focus, better effort. Now listen carefully. Hard work is not punishment. Hard work is power. It is the force that turns potential into reality. It is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Without hard work, dreams remain dreams. Ideas remain ideas. Plans remain plans. But with hard work, everything begins to move. Everything begins to change. Everything begins to grow. There will be days when it feels heavy. Days when your energy is low. Days when nothing seems to be moving. But those are not the days to slow down. Those are the days to push harder, because that is where growth happens. Let me be clear. The world does not reward comfort. It rewards contribution, and contribution requires effort. Consistent effort, focused effort, strong effort. When you work harder than ever, you develop something powerful inside you. Confidence. Not the kind you speak, the kind you earn, the kind that cannot be taken away. Because every time you push yourself, every time you refuse to quit, every time you go beyond comfort, you build evidence. Evidence that you are capable. Evidence that you are strong. Evidence that you are becoming more. And that evidence becomes belief. And belief becomes identity. And identity becomes your future. So understand this clearly. Working harder is not just about doing more. It is about becoming more. Stronger, faster, wiser, more disciplined, more valuable. And in the end, that is what success really is. Not luck, not shortcuts, not timing, but the result of someone who decided to work harder than ever and never stopped. Let me tell you something that can quietly destroy a life. It is not failure. It is not lack of talent. It is not even difficult circumstances. It is something far more dangerous. Blaming circumstances. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines, practiced every day. And discipline begins with one powerful decision. Taking responsibility, not for everything that happens to you, but for everything you become from it. You see, it is easy to look at life and say, I didn't have the opportunity. I didn't have the support. I didn't have the right conditions. And maybe some of that is true. But here is the question that matters more. What are you doing with what you do have? Because circumstances will never be perfect. Never. There will always be something missing, something unfair, something difficult. That is life. But successful people understand something different. They do not wait for perfect conditions. They create progress inside imperfect conditions. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. Because better people do not depend on circumstances. They adapt to them. They rise inside them. They grow through them. Now listen carefully. Every time you blame something outside yourself, you give away power. Power to change. Power to grow. Power to improve. And once that power is given away, you become stuck. Not because you cannot move, but because you believe you cannot move. That is the real cost of blaming circumstances. It does not just slow you down. It stops your thinking. It weakens your effort. It shrinks your vision. Let me ask you something. What happens when a person believes, it is not my fault, so it is not my responsibility? They stop improving. They stop trying. They stop pushing. Because responsibility is the engine of change. You see, life does not respond to excuses. It responds to action, not reasons, not stories, not justification. Action. And action begins the moment you say, maybe I cannot control everything, but I can control me. That is the turning point. That is where life begins to shift. Now think about successful people. They do not waste time arguing with reality. They work with it. They adjust. They move. They figure it out because they understand something simple. You cannot change circumstances immediately, but you can change yourself immediately. And when you change yourself, circumstances begin to change with you. Slowly, then steadily, then completely. But blaming does the opposite. It keeps you focused on what is outside your control. It drains energy. It builds frustration. And it creates a cycle of helplessness. And here's the truth most people avoid. The longer you blame circumstances, the longer you stay where you are. Because blame feels like relief. But it creates delay. If you are not willing to risk the unusual, you will have to settle for the ordinary. And ordinary life often begins with ordinary thinking. Thinking that says, this is just how my life is. But life is not fixed. Life is shaped, and you are the shaper. Now listen carefully. Taking responsibility does not mean life was fair. It means you are powerful enough to respond anyway. It means you refuse to let circumstances define your future. It means you choose effort over excuses. Because at the end of the day, you may not control where you start, but you absolutely control what you do next. And what you do next determines everything. So here is the lesson. Stop blaming circumstances. Start building strength. Stop pointing outward. Start improving inward. Stop explaining your situation. Start changing your situation. Because the moment you take full responsibility, you take back your power. And once you have your power back, your life begins to move forward again. Let me tell you something very simple, but very powerful. Success does not always go to the fastest. It does not always go to the smartest. It does not even always go to the most talented. It goes to the one who stays, the one who endures, the one who outlasts everyone else. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. And the most important discipline of all is this: do not quit. Not when it gets hard. Not when it gets slow. Not when it gets quiet. Do not quit. You see, many people start strong. They have energy. They have excitement. They have big dreams. But somewhere along the way, the energy fades. The excitement disappears. The progress slows down. And that is where most people stop. But the real game begins after the excitement ends. That is where winners are made. That is where character is tested. That is where the future is decided. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. Because better people do not stop when things get difficult. They continue. They adjust. They persist. Now think about this. Every goal you want in life requires time. Not instant time. Not easy time. But sustained time. And most people underestimate that. They think success is a moment. But success is a process. A long process. And in that process, there will be delays. There will be setbacks. There will be confusion. There will be moments where nothing seems to work. But those moments are not signs to quit. They are tests of endurance. Because anyone can work when results are visible. Anyone can stay motivated when progress is fast. But can you continue when nothing is happening yet? Can you stay committed when results are silent? Can you keep working when no one is watching? That is the real question. And that is where most people fall off. Not because they are incapable, but because they cannot wait long enough. They cannot trust the process long enough. They cannot endure long enough. But those who stay, those who continue, those who refuse to quit, they eventually reach a point others never see, because time always reveals the truth. You see, life has a quiet law. Those who stay the longest win the most. Not immediately, But inevitably, success is not to be pursued. It is to be attracted by the person you become. And you become that person by staying in the game, day after day, even when it is hard, even when it is slow, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Because every day you continue, you are building something invisible: strength, discipline, patience, resilience. And those things are what separate winners from everyone else. Now understand this clearly. Outlasting others is not about competing with them.